Welcome to In the Spotlight. I'm Abigail Pogrebin. Ari'el Stachel is a Tony Award and Grammy Award-winning actor, singer, and writer. His new solo play, which I cannot recommend more highly, is called Other the Play. It is now off-Broadway at the Greenwich House Theater after acclaimed runs at Berkeley Rep and Berkshire Theater Group. Ari'el received the 2018 Tony Award for Best Featured Actor in a Musical for originating the role of Khaled in The Band's Visit on Broadway, a performance that also earned Lucille Lortel and Drama Desk nominations. On screen, Ari stars in the upcoming feature Death Do Us Part, and he's appeared in Olivia Wilde's Don't Worry, Darling by Warner Brothers and A24's Zola. His television credits include Law & Order SVU, Billions, Jessica Jones, Blue Bloods, and The Night Agent. Welcome, Ari.
Thank you.
So good to be with you. Ari, I am the biggest fan, and it is such a pleasure to have you on the broadcast. And in the middle of this run, because I know you have 8 shows a week, am I right?
I have 2 shows later.
And 2 shows later. So we're going to do this half hour and let you prepare. Let's start with just a bit of your story, which obviously weaves through the show.
Yeah.
Can you, I know it's hard on one foot because you've had so many chapters, but just kind of give us a sense of Ari's arc, how you got here into this piece of incredible art.
So the arc, I'll start, is that I am the son of a Yemenite Israeli father who moved here as a cab driver in San Francisco in the 80s. My mom is Ashkenazi Jewish, raised in the East Coast from New York. They met in San Francisco folk dancing. They had me. They split.
When you say folk dancing, you just brush
Israeli
right over
folk
that.
dancing. Israeli folk dancing.
Were they both experts, or that just happened?
No, my mom was in med school at the time at Stanford, and so she would go out to San Francisco to do folk dancing, and my dad was there, and that's where he built community. He was in San Francisco and other Israelis, and so my mom had always liked darker-skinned men and didn't know that she could find a Jewish man who was darker-skinned. And so she met my dad folk dancing, and they fell in love quickly. They had me, and then they split up after realizing that their values were very different. My father was Israeli, and he was more focused on making money, making a living, and my mom was more focused on tikkun olam. Mm-hmm. And my mom really wanted my dad to do something that was of service to the world. And my dad said, I want to take your money as a doctor and buy real estate. And so the relationship ended, and I was seesawing between a Yemenite Israeli household and an Ashkenazi American household. Went to Jewish day school. I was the only kid of Yemeni descent other than my sister there, and was teased for my brown skin. After 9/11, my dad was called Osama bin Laden,
and was that simply because of his?
Because of how he looked. My dad had a big, thick beard, and to kids, he just looked like Osama. And so I made it my mission to try to hide my ethnicity. Mm. And I left my Jewish day school. I moved to an all-white suburban middle school where my dad moved, tried to pass as white. It didn't work. Met a young African-American kid the next year who accepted me and assumed that I was light-skinned black. And so I spent the next 8 years trying to hide my father's identity, trying to hide that I was a Yemeni Jew.
So were you essentially not passing, but acting as a black person?
I was passing.
For how long?
For 8 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, and so I thought I'd resolve that when I came to NYU. I came out as Middle Eastern. I won the Tony Award for playing a Middle Eastern role, which was a real watershed moment for me because I never thought that I would publicly be Middle Eastern. Mm. And on the very night that I won my Tony Award, it became clear to me that the lifelong OCD that I had was really coming to a head.
And let's just talk about that night.
Yeah.
You so deserved that award. That performance is extraordinary. I feel so lucky to have seen it.
Thanks.
But it's really a double-edged sword that night because you kind of have a full-blown anxiety attack.
Yeah.
Can you just take us through that a bit?
Sure. So you sort of are on the moment where you achieve everything you've ever dreamed of, and I was still me. Mm. I was scared of interacting with people. I was scared of sitting across from people. I was scared of being seen in anything that was outside of character. I had spent so much of my life crafting somebody to be palatable, to be liked. And all of a sudden I'm in the world and I'm off stage, and now there's me. And I haven't caught up to who that person is, and I don't necessarily feel worthy of the award. And maybe I'm lying. I mean, I certainly felt like when I played the character, I was in it, but off stage, I was me. And that felt really, really frightening to me. And so I had a panic attack. I'm talking about it. It's coming up now as I talk about it. And the play that I wrote, you said, to bring you up to the present moment, is about that moment and realizing that on what should be the greatest night of my life, I am completely dysfunctional. I'm in the bathroom. I'm running away from all the well-wishers, trying to blot the sweat off of my face. And
can you talk about the sweat for a minute? You talk
Yeah.
about it in the play. That's
Yeah.
one of the manifestations of the OCD. And
Yeah.
I know a bit about
Yeah.
this illness because I have someone close to me who has gone through it. And what I think people don't understand is that there is a kind of repetitive compulsion that feels logical.
yeah.
Can you explain a little bit, just for people who don't understand, that it's not just kind of a voice in your head, it's like a system?
Well, it is a system, and for me, it actually evolved over the years. So as a kid, it was like, if you don't touch things 3 times, the world is going to explode, and you believe that. It's not just like a funny thing.
Right.
And as I got older, it started to manifest physically, as it is right now, where I start talking about these things, and my anxiety says, "Don't talk about it. Keep us safe."
Are you
And-
actually hearing the voice, or it's sort of
It's sort
internal?
of.
Feel free to get a tissue.
Yeah, no, I will. I mean, I'm not hearing the voice so much as I feel it. It's sort of like, but I've also learned that I can move and I can still operate and I can still talk and I'm still me. And so, to finish the circle on the play, so I started writing after that experience, winning the Tony, because I realized I couldn't audition for other things. I was completely dysfunctional.
Wow.
I did not want to be in the world. And so
it
writing,
wasn't just that night. It really...
it was the whole time. It was on stage. It was after stage. I mean, I would finish the show and go to my dressing room, and if somebody high profile came to the show, I would ask myself, am I going to run out of the theater, or am I going to get high right now to pretend that things are okay? I mean, it was a daily thing.
Wow. And so what happens after you win the Tony? Do you keep auditioning? Do you stay out there, or do you say, like,
I kind of ran away and started writing. I mean, I would audition. I mean, one of the things that changed for actors is that you started to do a lot of self-tapes. And so self-tapes kind of give you that sort of remove
Buffer.
from being, that buffer of being in person socially, which real auditions would kill me. And so I started writing the show. And I was writing a show about this kid who hid his ethnicity and hid his dad. And 2 years in, I meet this amazing director, Tony Taccone, and he looks at me and he says, "Why are you writing this story?" And I say, "Well, because I want to talk about this kid who hid his ethnicity." And he said, "But why is the adult writing about it? Why are you, as a 28-year-old man, obsessed with this 13-year-old kid?" I don't know. And at a certain point in that room, I blurred out, "He wants to be less anxious." And Tony looks at me and goes, "That's interesting. Go write about that."
Wow.
And I would say up to that point, I had about maybe 20 pages written. I came in with 25 new pages the next day. Brand new material about a guy who's desperate to overcome his anxiety. And I started to understand in many ways that even my experience as a kid was the heightened experience of a kid with severe OCD reacting to real world events. And so this experience hiding my ethnicity, of course, it was rooted in sort of social survival, but it was also a heightened way of dealing with it, right? There's a lot of Middle Eastern kids. How many kids are gonna hide their parents and try to appropriate a different identity to survive? And so we discovered that, like, the story is more complex, and it was the interplay of mental health and identity. And so ultimately the show, opens on the night of that Tony Award, and sort of this dissonance between this incredible career moment and this sort of crash as a human being.
Did anyone say to you along the way, because I know this has had iterations in different places, this isn't going to work, you have to pick whether you're dealing with identity or mental illness? Were there any naysayers, or were people cheerleading every step of the way?
So I think, we spoke about this. You talk about sort of you're a Jewish woman and you're also a twin, and people want you to talk about being Jewish more often than they want you to talk about being a twin, even though both are probably really central parts of your life. In my case, I think that I will make a distinction that I opened the play before October 7th. And pre-October 7th, there wasn't
Just
really
to be clear,
much.
you opened your play.
My play, the
Right.
first version of Other, which was titled Out of Character,
Was
opened
pre-October 7th. Wow.
pre-October 7th. And so at that point, I think that it felt like the mental health part of it sort of created an opening for everyone. And it felt like it also really got to the core of my human experience. Because before I am a Jew and before I am Yemenite, I am a human. And I think that anxiety is a very human thing. And so I think in many ways it sort of cracked the truest version of the story. Now, I think we're in a moment where it's really important for artists to wave the flag. And so in order for me to get attention, well, I don't cut through the fat by saying it's a story about anxiety. I cut through the fat by saying this is a Yemenite, Israeli, Jewish story, right? That's how you get people in. But if you're talking about that and you're hitting it, with a hammer, that's not the truth of my human experience.
And it's why people are relating to it of all races, of all ethnicities, of all backgrounds.
Well, yeah, we're sort of in a somewhat radical situation in that an African-American, non-Jewish woman, LaShans, who has just started a really illustrious producing career, decided she wanted to lead produce it. And I think that's kind of cool and interesting that my Yemenite Jewish anxiety-riddled story is something that appeals to her. And it says to me that it's a story that first and foremost is a human story.
Let's talk about October 7th, which is hard to talk about. But I, just full confession, have relied on your Instagram feed through this impossible time. And part of it is because you were always doubling down on the complexity.
Yep.
And when anyone was trying to oversimplify a certain kind of tribalism, a certain kind of us versus them, you're in or you're out, you are the living embodiment of how Jewish identity is not one thing.
Yep.
There was so much about the overlay of race in this country being applied to Israel in a way that I think does not apply in the same way
Completely.
at all, but has become a facile kind of shorthand. So first of all, your decision to wade into the fight, because in some way you could just say, I'm not. There's too much hate out there, and frankly, there's too much social peril, even career risk in doing that. Your courage is unmistakable. It's also just joyful. So much of your Instagram feed, it's not didactic at all, but you are essentially, I think, wading into waters that some have just avoided altogether.
Yeah, I can tell you that I have so many things to say about this, so we'll go one step at a time. For me, it was not a matter of if, it was what to say. I have spent an entire lifetime not being seen as a Jew. And so for me, this was a moment to widen the canon, so to speak, in the way that people were seeing Jews. And of course, what is the entry point? How do you say something? Because on the one hand, you have thousands of people dying every day. People are so divided. And so the first thing that I thought about to talk about was my ancestry. And I thought that my ancestors, my Yemeni Jewish ancestors, were living bridges. These were people who had lived who were originally indigenous Southern Arabian tribes and adopted Judaism thousands of years ago. That's what I learned about my ancestry, my Yemenite Jewish roots. And so we're talking about communities that have the same DNA. And I couldn't accept this binary. I couldn't accept white colonizer. What are we talking about? But I want to tell you a personal story that really sums it up for me, which is that about 2 days after October 7th, I was, like any Jewish person, I think, struck with grief. I couldn't move. And I was invited to a rally for the victims of the attacks in Midtown for Israel. And so I took a city bike there, and it was peaceful. We sang Shema Yisrael. And I've never seen all kinds of Jews. I saw Hasidic, old, young, college, holding hands. It was really beautiful. And it wasn't combative. It wasn't hateful. It was just beauty. And that rally turned into a march. And eventually, I think we hit Lexington, and it was stopped by police barricades. And on the other side of the street were other police barricades, and it was a pro-Palestine rally. And something that was so beautiful and connected and human became antagonistic and hateful, and they were yelling at each other. And on the other side, on the Palestinian side, somebody raised the Israeli flag and lit it on fire. And
you saw this?
I saw it with my own eyes. This is 2 days, this is October 9th. And I ran away down the street because I didn't come for that. But I had to bear witness to this. It was the most palpable form of hate I've ever seen in my life. And a group on the Israeli side jumps the fence, and they start sort of, it becomes a brawl and very violent, and they start attacking the people who are burning this flag. And I'm standing, sort of can't move, and the police separate these guys, and one of the guys who was one of the flag burners stumbles down the street, and he goes closer and closer to me, and he finally locks eyes with me, and he says, "Habibi, f*** those Jews." And I didn't know what to say. I didn't know whether to say I'm Jewish, I'm Israeli, I see myself in you. But before he knew where I was from, and before he knew what I was, he saw me as a brother, because he called me Habibi. And I think that motivated me, the sense that that there is a molecular level of connection that is stronger than the hatred, and that was recognized that quickly. And so I use that as my entry point, which is that, like, I'm choosing to look at us as brothers because you chose, before you said something hateful, you said Habibi. And it tells me that hate is fickle. It tells me that hate is invented, and it tells me that borders are invented. And no matter how much blowback I get, I feel this kinship in my heart, and I want to continue to speak to the fact that before we know anything about each other, there's a sense of relationship and connection. Does that make sense? It
does. It's way more optimistic than a lot of people feel right now. Is kind of to come back to shared DNA in some way.
That's the argument for me. The argument is I mean, and not only that, I remember once I was in Israel with my aunt, and we were listening to the radio, and there's different radio stations in Israel. One is the Quran, and the other one, there's a Yemeni station. And I went back and forth, and I said, "Aunt, do you not hear that this is very similar?" And she said, "No, it's not the same." And I said, No, it sounds the same to me. I mean, I just...
Do you have all languages, by the way?
Do I speak? Well, my dad and aunt speak Arabic and Hebrew and English. I only learned Hebrew because my dad, I guess if there was any shame that he had growing up in Israel, was the fact that his parents spoke to him in Arabic.
Wow.
They had just arrived from Yemen.
And so he internalized some kind of...
He wanted to assimilate and become Israeli. They didn't, you know, so I think that...
So many layers here.
There's so many layers, right? But I you know, my grandfather's name is Saddam. That's his name. And so you know...
Your dad's name?
Is Aharon. And I don't know. I mean, a lot of people would think that I'm sort of hokey pokey or an artist and talking about unity, and I'm unrealistic, and I get a lot of pushback. My Israeli cousins send me messages: "Stop being unrealistic. Stop being naive. Ari'el, stop it." And I don't have anything to say to them other than I was born here in America. I experienced horrific Islamophobia, horrific anti-Arab hatred. I felt that in my bones. I think it's unfounded, it's disgusting. And I've also felt this thing of anti-Semitism, particularly after October 7th. And
you're carrying it all.
Yeah, so I don't know, I'm wanting to say something articulate, but there's nothing that I can say other than that I speak because I can't hide anymore. I've hid too long.
It's beautiful. You sing in the show.
Yeah.
You sang gorgeously in the band's visit. What's the decision to do that? Is that just kind of almost inescapable because it's so much part of you?
Well, I sing a Yemeni song called L'Chaeli, and again, these are other ways of sort of bringing our unity back together. You know, that's a song that was orchestrated. I don't know if they call it orchestrated, but somewhere in some hut in Yemen, some Jews orchestrated that song, and I feel like that is something that is an undeniable way of helping us feel without words.
Do we have a clip of that? Would we
Yes.
be able to show that?
Oh, yeah.
Good. Let's show that clip.
We'll show it.
השיבני ושובו ותרצן תשובותי השיבני ושובו ותרצן
I want to go to your dad for a minute.
Yeah.
That was one of the most heartbreaking pieces of this play is just how long, in a way, you denied your connection to him, publicly at least.
Yeah.
And for him to learn of that, he was learning of it pretty late. Am I right about that?
Yeah, well, I have the worst version of the story is that I actually never quite had the courage to share with him what I'd gone through growing up. And when I started exploring it in my writing, it was really challenging. You know, those are the places where you go, oh, this is something that's going to cost something, and not just for me, but for other people. And that's a decision you have to make as a writer and as a performer. But sometimes the play takes you in a place, and the writing process takes you to a place where it takes you, and you don't quite have control over where it takes you, and you have to listen to it. And I called my dad about 2 days before we opened at Berkeley Rep, and I said, Dad, I just want you to know the show deals with some tough stuff. Just be prepared. And I don't think that was an adequate warning for him. And by the end of that show, it looked like a truck had ran through him. And I think the sense for him was that he couldn't fully protect me how he wanted to protect me, and couldn't believe that I'd gone through those kind of hardships that he couldn't shield me from. But I don't see it like that. I see it as, it's an experience I went through, and it motivates me, and that's also why I speak, to honor my dad.
And before we get to a little more of his reaction, I think what you're also hitting on is, and I learned this early, that if you're going to do memoir, if you're going to go to the truth, but then you curate it, it's not actually going to have the impact, because people can smell what you're holding back.
Yes.
You may not know what you're not telling.
Yes.
But if you don't, and it's not about opening a vein, but if you're not going to go to the edge on the truth, you're actually not telling a true story anymore, and it doesn't succeed.
Yep.
And that's part of what I felt. It wasn't raw and uncomfortable, but I felt like bravery. You were protecting him too.
Yeah.
But it's like what you did to, in a way, stay alive.
Yeah.
Was to deny one of the closest people to you.
Yeah.
You made a self-preservation decision that, as you said, had a cost.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it is so loving.
Yeah.
Your feelings to him are so loving coming through this. And I just wanted to kind of hug him without knowing him.
Yeah.
How has it changed your relationship?
I think it's let him understand me more. I think that it's made me feel a little bit freer. around him and around everyone. But you know, the funny thing is that my dad is, you know, he doesn't understand. I say it in the first part of the play. He doesn't understand anxiety, so he understands it sort of rationally. I think the play sort of gives him a portal to who I am. But my dad is still like, okay, my son is doing good. He's doing a play. We'll watch the basketball game when it's, you know, like the love is very consistent, and I think he's happy, and I think the more he's seen the play, the more proud he's become of who I am. But I don't think anything that I do really impresses him. I think my dad is just like, and I hate to say this, but it's like just generally impressed by me. So anything I do, it's like, yeah, that's my son. He does amazing play. Like, it's just like, you know. So.
Let's just talk about your looks for a minute, because we have to embarrass you, and obviously you're very good looking. And but that, I mention it because it plays in to the script a bit of you're also having people respond to you romantically.
Yeah.
And they're making assumptions about identity. How did you play with that?
Well, I think that they're making a lot of assumptions. First of all, I guess I'm 6'1", and thank you for calling me good looking. So then part of the tension is that, like, why am I not smoother? Why do I feel anxious all the time? So there's that real dissonance. Like, I really wanted to be this kind of person and wasn't. So that's on the anxiety front. On the identity front, it was really interesting to manipulate it growing up, because, you know, if I do my hairstyle a certain way, there's ways that I can manipulate the way that I look, which to the same, I guess, high school crowd of girls, I could either be very cool or very not. And so in high school, you know, of course, this deep cost of trying to hide my ethnicity was really, really hard. On the other hand, like, I moved to this all predominantly black school, and whereas in the Jewish school I was called a terrorist, at the predominantly black school I was seen as light skinned, and that was like really fantastic. That was like the highest praise that I could have, and my curls were seen as good hair. And so, like, depending on what community was perceiving me, I had a completely different experience. And then, yeah, you know, post-band's visit, sort of being exoticized and people being curious about being with a Middle Eastern guy, which I could say I didn't like, but I liked it.
And you were slotted into roles, you say terrorist number 2, but has that changed in terms of your career, or do you feel like that's still happening?
Well, I wrote this play on a number of reasons, because it was important for me to say that my story is I'm Jewish, and that was a lot harder for me to be seen as Jewish. I had never gotten auditions for Jewish roles, ever. In fact, and I say this in the play, when I auditioned for the band's visit, I initially didn't get the role of the Egyptian, and I said, can I be seen for one of the Jewish? And they said, no, they're not going in that direction, which in other words meant they're looking for people who look Ashkenazi. And so part of my mission in writing this was saying, I'm Jewish. This is a Jewish. Somebody who looks like me is Jewish.
Amazing. Ari'el Stachel, I want to make sure people see this show. And you don't have much time. It ends December 6th. There are some tickets left.
Yes.
But also your Instagram, so people can follow whatever you do next, is?
Ari'el Stachel.
We'll put it on the screen. I cannot thank you enough for your work, for your writing, for everything you're putting out into the world. And you are just a leader for me and for so many others. I mean that without hyperbole. Thank you
so much. Thank you.
I'm Abigail Pogrebin for In the Spotlight. It's good to be with you, and I'll see you next time.